All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're going to get into one of the most incredible stories happening inside your body, literally right now. It's the story of how your cells fight to survive. We're talking about the microscopic drama that plays out every single time your body gets put under stress. So let's kick this off with a question I think we've all wondered about at some point. Why is it that when you hit the gym, your muscles get bigger, but if you break your arm and have to put it in a cast, it seems to just wither away? It feels like a simple question, but the answer is one of the most fundamental secrets to how our bodies actually work. Just look at these two extremes, right? On one side, you've got the stress of intense exercise, and the result is growth, strength. On the other side, you have the stress of not using the muscle, and the result is shrinking, weakness. They're complete opposite outcomes, all based on the type of stress. To really get why, we have to zoom in, way in. See, the answer to this whole mystery isn't just about muscles. It's about a core process called cellular adaptation. You can think of it as the playbook our cells use to deal with pretty much everything life throws at them, from a tough workout to hormones to an injury. So, what is cellular adaptation? Well, at its core, it's just how a cell changes its shape, its size, or even its job to better handle what's going on around it. It's not about giving up. It's about adjusting to a new reality to stay alive and keep doing its work. It's survival, plain and simple. So how exactly do cells do this? Well, you can think of it like they have this incredible survival kit with 4 main tools inside. And depending on the kind of stress and the kind of cell we're talking about, it's going to pull out a different tool for the job. Let's break them down one by one. Okay, the first tool in the kit is called atrophy. This is basically the shrink response. The whole organ or tissue gets smaller, and that's because its individual cells are getting smaller. They're just trying to conserve energy and resources because they're not being asked to do as much work. And yep, you guessed it, that arm in a cast is the classic example of what's called disuse atrophy. But that's not the only trigger. Atrophy can also kick in if a muscle loses its nerve signals, or from hormonal changes, a lack of nutrients, or even just from constant physical pressure on a tissue. Now for tool number 2, and this is the one that answers our bodybuilder question, hypertrophy. This is the grow response. In this case, the organ gets bigger not because you have more cells, but because each individual cell gets bigger and packs on more muscle, so to speak, to handle a bigger workload. Now, here's what's so fascinating about this. Why do they get bigger instead of just making more cells? Well, it's because certain cells, like our skeletal muscle fibers and our heart muscle cells, are basically permanent. They don't have the ability to divide and multiply. So their only option for getting stronger is to bulk up what they've already got. Okay, let's move on to our third tool, which builds on this idea. It's called hyperplasia. Now, on the surface, this might look a lot like hypertrophy. The organ gets bigger, but the way it happens is totally different. Here, the cells are actually increasing in number. They're dividing and making more of themselves. And of course, this can only happen in tissues where the cells actually can divide. Makes sense, right? Places that respond to hormones are prime examples. Think about the female breast or the lining of the uterus, which has to rebuild itself every single month. For them, hyperplasia is the go-to strategy. So far, these adaptations seem like pretty clever survival tricks, don't they? But here's where the story takes a really crucial turn. Depending on what's causing it, these exact same processes can be perfectly normal and healthy. We call that physiologic. Or they can be a warning sign of a disease, which we call pathologic. This shows it perfectly. Look at hypertrophy. An athlete's muscles getting bigger from working out, that's a fantastic, healthy, functional adaptation. But a heart muscle getting thicker because it's constantly fighting against high blood pressure, that's a dangerous adaptation that strains the heart and can actually lead to heart failure. It's the same process, but with 2 wildly different outcomes. And it's the exact same story with hyperplasia. Breast tissue multiplying during pregnancy is a totally normal, necessary response to hormones. But when the lining of the uterus gets too thick because of way too much hormonal stimulation, that's a pathologic condition that can cause real problems. So you see, the context is everything. This brings us to the fourth and final tool in our cellular survival kit. And this one. This one is the most dramatic. It's where a survival mechanism can actually become a huge liability. It's called metaplasia. Get this. This isn't about changing the cell's size or number. This is about changing the cell's entire identity. When it's faced with some kind of chronic irritation, One type of mature cell gets swapped out for a different, tougher type of mature cell. The cell is literally reprogrammed. The classic example is what happens in a smoker's airway. Okay, so normally, your airways are lined with these delicate, column-shaped cells that have these tiny hairs, cilia, that sweep out mucus. But under the constant, brutal assault of cigarette smoke, the body does something drastic. It replaces those specialized cells with tougher, more resilient, flat cells called squamous cells. So what's the trade-off? Well, it's a huge one. This new lining is definitely tougher. It can handle the smoke better. But it's lost its special powers. It can't make protective mucus anymore, and it can't clear junk out of the airway. The result? The person is way more likely to get infections. The cell chose being tough over being functional. Now, here is the hopeful part. The source material is really clear on this. This change is reversible. If you take away the stress, if the person stops smoking, the tissue can often change back to its normal, healthy self. But, and this is a really big but, what happens if that chronic irritation just keeps going? What if those cells are forced to live in that altered, stressed out state for years and years on end? This right here is the critical point. The source says that these adaptations, especially the bad kind of hyperplasia and this persistent metaplasia, can create what it calls a fertile soil for cancer. They can predispose to malignant transformation. And get this, the source material even includes a sad face emoticon right in the text. That's how well established and serious this connection is. It's how a survival mechanism can pave the way for something much, much worse. So, okay, we've looked at all 4 tools in the kit: shrinking, growing, multiplying, and completely changing identity. At the end of the day, what's the big takeaway here? It's this. Our bodies are in a constant, dynamic conversation with the world. And these 4 terms, atrophy, hypertrophy, hyperplasia, and metaplasia, they're not just words in a textbook. They are the language of that conversation. They tell the story of the stresses we're under and how our unbelievably resilient cells are fighting back, adapting to survive. And so that really leaves us with one final thought. Whether it's from the run you took this morning, or the calluses forming on your hands, or even just the air you're breathing in right now, your cells are adapting. So the real question is, what microscopic story is your body writing in this very moment?